Hello everybody and welcome to the channel, the Star Wars Galaxy. Today I want to do my first fan fiction. I was doing a Clone Wars and Rebels rewatch of all of the Mandalorian episodes, and I got to the episode The Lawless, which sees Duchess Satine killed by Darth Maul in front of Obi-Wan. And seeing Obi-Wan there in pain and anguish, it made me think, what if he turned? And I thought about it, and I thought about it a lot. That's what we're here to see today. It's going to be fun. It's going to go kind of crazy. Very unrealistic, but hey, that's the fun of it. So, don't get too mad. It's going to be fun. We're going to go through it. Yeah. Leave a like, subscribe if you enjoy it at all. That'd be appreciated. Thank you. Let's get into it. So, it's the middle of the Clone Wars. Obi-Wan is back on Mandalore. He has just discovered that Darth Maul is in control of the Mandalorians. In the palace, he holds Duchess Satine, Obi-Wan's love, by her throat, in the air, taunting Obi-Wan, and saying this is how he was going to get him back. He never planned on killing Obi-Wan, but he planned on torturing him, making him suffer. And with Obi-Wan there, helpless, Maul swiftly pulls in Satine, stabs her right through the heart, and there she lays, in Obi-Wan's arms, and he remembers her final words. Remember, my dear Obi-Wan, I've loved you always. And this hits Obi-Wan right in the soul, more than any battle wound would ever hurt. These words hurt him unbelievably bad. It was like a spark that began to start an eruption inside of him. Obi-Wan had done an excellent job his whole life as a Jedi of foregoing attachments. When Qui-Gon died on Naboo, it hurt a lot, but he was ready, he was trained for it. He'd seen fellow Jedi and clones fall every day now during the Clone Wars, and he could even sense turmoil within his apprentice, the Chosen One, Anakin Skywalker. He'd trained himself to let go of everyone except his love, Duchess Satine, the woman he loved. The woman he would have left the Jedi Order for just a few years ago. The woman the Jedi Code forced him to abandon. The woman that was killed in front of him. Killed by the same monster that killed his master, Qui-Gon Jinn, all those years ago. The man that had been terrorizing planets had taken over Mandalore, all for selfish ideals. Killed Satine just to get back at him. And the Jedi Code forbade Obi-Wan from killing this man, this monster that had ended the lives of his master and his love. That would end today. Without thinking of anything beyond these walls, without thinking of the consequences of his actions, Kenobi did something he'd never done before. He acted. He acted upon the raging fire inside of him that had been building up over since Naboo, and in a burst of anger, he sent an exploding wave of the Force through the room, killing the Mandalorian guards, the soldiers, and knocking Savage Opress unconscious, as Maul also flew back, hit the wall, but stayed conscious. A bit shocked, but laughing now, Maul said, "Finally, I've corrupted the great Obi-Wan Kenobi. I sense the dark side in you growing faster than I'd ever dreamed." Again, Maul said, laughing. Obi-Wan, now feeling nothing but anger, aggression, giving in to the dark side, to finally destroy Darth Maul. But in all of that, deep down, he had a sense of calmness that was happy, and finally, he thought, this is happening. Finally, he was free. Finally, he was able to do what he's wanted to do since the death of Qui-Gon. To Maul, Obi-Wan said, "I hope it was worth it, as now your experience will be the same as mine." And in one swift, decisive motion, Kenobi lifted a now barely conscious Savage, and at the same time, he pulled the Darksaber from a distracted Maul, and as he pulled Savage in, he stabbed him the same way Satine had died, this time in front of Maul. The same way Maul had stabbed Satine, Kenobi now did it to Savage to get revenge immediately. Kenobi threw his body back at Maul, then charged him with a fury in his eyes, making his eyes seem almost red or yellow. As Kenobi charged Maul, he had the Darksaber in one hand, and he pulled his own blue saber off of the dead guard to wield both sabers. Darth Maul, in a state of shock and confusion, used his dark rage to barely block Kenobi's first strike at him, and he leapt to the door of the throne room, running into the open area where Maul and Palpatine had fought in the Clone Wars. This time, it would be a different duel. This time, Maul thought he would get the upper hand if this happened to Kenobi, but Kenobi caught him completely off guard in this fit of rage. And as this battle begins, it sends ripples through the Force, throughout the galaxy. The two people who would feel this ripple the most were Palpatine and Anakin, similar to what Palpatine felt in the Clone Wars, but this was different. The seemingly uncorruptible Obi-Wan Kenobi had turned to the dark side, and Palpatine had felt it. Palpatine knew what had happened. On Mandalore, his former apprentice, and perhaps his new one, in a wild turn of events, were fighting to the death. Palpatine had not predicted this. He thought he was going to foresee the entire Clone Wars, but this single turn of events shocked him. "Ready my ship immediately," Palpatine told Mas Amedda. Then, on the other side of Coruscant, in his chambers, Anakin was sleeping with Padme when he suddenly was awoken. A horrible dream, no, a vision, or a feeling had awoken Anakin in his sleep. This was much more real than he'd have before, much more real than the nightmares that were to come of Padme dying. These seemed like something that had just happened. He couldn't quite make it out. He wasn't as strong as Palpatine to determine exactly what had happened, but he knew his master, Obi-Wan Kenobi, was in trouble while on his mission in Mandalore. He knew something had gone wrong. He had no idea how bad it truly was. "I'm sorry, Padme, but Obi-Wan is in trouble. I'm leaving immediately for Mandalore," he said to Padme. "Let me come with you. Kenobi is my friend too," she said, and Anakin swiftly denied her, said, "I can't. This is far more dangerous than I already know," and without looking back, got into his Jedi fighter, flew away from Coruscant, and on that, him and Palpatine were on the same timeline to reach the planet and find Obi-Wan, if he was still alive. Back on Mandalore now, Kenobi jumped to take on Maul, still acting on deafening rage and dark determination to destroy Maul once and for all. This monster had taken everything from him, and it was only a matter of time, Kenobi knew, until he just infiltrated the Jedi, infiltrated Anakin, kept getting to him. Kenobi had to end this now, even though he'd been taught otherwise his entire life. He could not keep acting like this. He could not keep this up. Now, he engaged Darth Maul, and the two dark side users fought in an extremely fast-paced clash, the dark side energy between them only growing, except the energy was not the same. Kenobi was only getting angrier, while Maul was only getting more fearful. This battle was not as even as Maul had hoped. Kenobi was using his Form 3 defensive style, of course, which Maul had been ready for. But Maul underestimated the dark side influence on this form, and the double saber-wielding form that Kenobi was now using. With this form, Kenobi wasn't losing an ounce of energy, using excellent timing for offensive strikes, and perfectly timing his defense on Maul. This was wearing Maul down. He was getting frustrated. He was getting angrier, more fearful, not sure of how to defeat Kenobi after finally executing his plan of getting to corrupt him. Maul had done it, but at what cost? And after many hard-fought minutes, both warriors really knew this was no longer a fair fight. Kenobi, using both his blue saber and the dark saber, was merely toying with Maul as the fight waned on. Kenobi wanted Maul to feel this. Kenobi wanted Maul to know he was going to lose. Kenobi was torturing him. Kenobi was in the dark side now. "You've been nothing but a nagging thorn in my side since our first encounter on Naboo," Kenobi told Maul. And then, finally, Maul crumbled to a knee, holding his lightsaber up in a final act of desperation, and Kenobi cut it off with the dark saber. Then he held his blue saber and the dark saber across Maul's neck like Anakin did to Dooku in Revenge of the Sith. "Please have mercy. Perhaps after all this, it's our destiny to join each other and take over the galaxy," begged Maul. "I do thank you for revealing my destiny, Maul. Unfortunately for you, this is where our path together ends. At my hand, and with your sabers." Kenobi threw away his blue saber and pulled in Maul's red one. He then killed Darth Maul. This act pulled Kenobi further into the dark side. He had completely changed in a matter of just an hour or so. Satine killed, and his whole world had exploded. He looked down at the red saber, and back to his former blue saber, and as a token for his turn to the dark side, he destroyed his blue saber, hooked Maul's red saber to his belt as his new one. This was who he was now. There was no turning back. There was no coming back. There was no redeeming at this point. Kenobi knew that. Kenobi knew how powerful he became. He had killed Maul and let the dark side overcome him, and for the first time since any of this had happened, a wave of grief, sorrow, anger, and fear surrounded him. "What have I done?" he asked himself, knowing he could never truly go back to who he was. He knew that. He knew this is not what Qui-Gon would have wanted. This is not Satine would have wanted, but this was where he was now. He was confined by the dark side, but freed of the light, freed of the confines of the Jedi that had let Qui-Gon die, the Jedi that would only act when the Senate allowed, rather than what the Force wanted, and therefore had sent him alone to Mandalore. He was free to bring peace back to the galaxy. But how? He cannot do this alone. He'd been meditating on these thoughts now for hours in the palace and the throne room, wondering what will his next move be after his world had crumbled upon himself and he had finally freed himself of the Jedi's shackles. Wondering what was next. After meditating for hours, destruction surrounding him and Mandalore in disarray, he was finally pulled out of the meditation by sensing a presence. "Anakin," he gasped. But no, this was something different. Something dark. Darker than he'd ever felt. "Sidious," Kenobi now gasped. No, both, Kenobi sensed. The Lord of the Sith and the most powerful Jedi Obi-Wan had ever known. In other words, two potential allies, but at least one potential enemy. The two ships landed away from one another, each one carrying a member of the most important moment of the war. This is what it would come down to. Kenobi, Anakin, Sidious, all in the same palace. As Anakin landed, he told R2, "Kenobi is here, but something is off. I sense only remnants of him, clouded by the dark side. I've felt this presence, or presences, since we arrived on the planet. Be ready to take off. I'll be right back." And Anakin strode into the palace and into the throne room now. He looked around, glass bodies scattered around the room. And finally he looked up to the throne. Obi-Wan across the room, sitting there. But it wasn't the typical Obi-Wan that Anakin knew and loved. Something felt off. His presence. He felt like a completely different person. Something had happened. "Obi-Wan, are you all right?" said Anakin before his eyes caught a glimpse of a new body. Anakin gasped. "Satine." "She's gone, Anakin. Killed by Maul." "Maul? Did he escape?" said Anakin, shocked. "No, Anakin. I killed him. I did what had to be done to free the galaxy of that evil. I killed him, and in doing so, I freed myself from the blinding constraints of the Jedi. If I had done this sooner, Anakin, the woman I loved wouldn't have died because of Maul, and because of me. Anakin, I know you understand. You must join." And suddenly the sound of two lightsabers igniting across the room caught the attention of both Kenobi and Skywalker. The hue of two red lightsabers illuminated the room. "Sidious," said Kenobi, igniting his new saber, along with the dark saber. "I knew I sensed an evil around here. Kenobi, this path of yours was unforeseen, even to me. I cannot let you destroy everything I've built. I give you one chance to join me against the Jedi, or die," Palpatine said, but he sensed how powerful Kenobi had become, and he could not let Skywalker and Kenobi join against him. That would ultimately be his demise if the Chosen One and his master joined together as one, embracing the dark side. Palpatine knew this, knowing he likely had to kill Kenobi. And Kenobi, during all this, had become much stronger in the Force, much stronger in the dark side. And while much older than Skywalker, This was an opportunity for Palpatine that the Force had put in the palm of his hand. Apprentice? Maybe. But probably having to kill one or both. Anakin now, seeing this, would not know what to do. And finally, after a moment of silence, Obi-Wan spoke towards Anakin, who was trying to process everything going on. Anakin, who had just arrived, of course, was now seeing his master engulfed by the dark side, and a mysterious figure, the mysterious Sith Lord, and Anakin recognized his voice, but refused to acknowledge just what he thought it was. To this point, Obi-Wan said to him, "Anakin, I know you understand what I have done. The Force has brought us to this very moment. You, the Chosen One, and I can destroy the Sith and end the war. Bring peace. Do not listen to him, my boy." And perhaps an event even more shocking than Obi-Wan's turn. The Sith had interrupted Obi-Wan, and has now removed his hood, revealing himself to be Chancellor Palpatine. Anakin, shocked, says, "What? This can't be." Rage and confusion boiling inside of Anakin. As it had been for years, this was just the beginning of what looked to be possibly a three-way battle, until Kenobi spoke up again. "Only together can we protect Padme from the same fate I have failed to protect Satine from. Join me, Anakin, and save your wife." Now this put a wrench in the entire standoff. Palpatine was almost as shocked as Anakin as that move. Anakin did not know that Obi-Wan knew this, but Obi-Wan, of course, secretly knew about this marriage between Anakin and Padme, and now understood. With the death of Satine, he got it. He knew if something happened to Padme, Anakin would fall down this same exact path. She meant everything to him, and Obi-Wan needed to use that. Palpatine, though, super shocked by this. That was his plan. He was going to lure Anakin by bringing Padme into it. Obi-Wan just kept getting in his way, kept ruining his plans, and no longer would that be the case. Palpatine put away his sabers, brought his hands up, fired a blast of lightning seemingly 10 times what Kenobi experienced from Dooku back on Geonosis at the beginning of the Clone Wars. Kenobi instinctively, of course, put his sabers up, but stumbled back, and Palpatine approached him, clearly with the upper hand, his mind focused solely on ending Kenobi, who just kept interfering with his plans for Anakin. He would not allow this to continue. And as Palpatine was ready to increase his lightning, fully engulfed in the dark side, he was ready to kill Kenobi with a strike, blowing him backwards. A new blade came up from behind him and slashed his right arm just before Palpatine sensed it. Palpatine was lucky that this was not a fatal blow, as he had been solely focused on Kenobi, but in the last second, he had sensed Anakin, and he had leaped away. Anakin, he realized, had embraced the dark side. He'd given in to his rage that was boiling inside of him for the entire war. He'd given in after the Sand People, after many scary moments with Padme, after his master turned to the dark side. Anakin has embraced it. But also, Palpatine worried he was embracing his master, Obi-Wan Kenobi, not Palpatine. And as Palpatine looked on from a distance, the two former Jedi got together, master and apprentice, embracing the dark side together as one. Obi-Wan turned to him, his apprentice now joining him. "I have taught you the light and done my best to keep you from the dark for your whole time as a Jedi, Anakin. We both know the turmoil, anger, and fear inside of you. Let it out, my young apprentice, and together, we can destroy the Sith. We can end this war, and you can protect Padme." "Yes, my master, together," said Anakin, and the two of them linked up together, knowing this was their destiny, moved on Palpatine, who called upon all the dark side energy to help heal or numb his arm so he could fight the formidable duo. He fired a bolt of lightning, and it was not of much effect. The two blocked it, and Palpatine, frustrated, angry, told them, "It is my destiny to rule this galaxy. I will not let two pathetic Jedi get in my way." And as the battle ensued, the two former Jedi fought together side by side. For many years, with only the light side as their ally, this duo had been formidable. But now, with the light side mastered and the dark side influence now let in, this duo was seemingly unstoppable. They fought off of each other, perfectly matching one another, as Palpatine fought desperately to fend them off. But as the battle continued, the three knew this was the will of the Force, and finally, the two former Jedi were following the Force rather than following the Senate. This was their destiny, and Anakin, angry with Palpatine for pretending to be his mentor, pretending to be the Chancellor, never letting him in on this secret of his, cut through his knee in the final blow, and as he dropped, Obi-Wan stabbed him through the back with his new red saber. Palpatine fired a final, desperate, pathetic blast of lightning at Anakin, catching him a little off guard, but not before Kenobi drew his saber up through his back, cutting him down finally. Anakin was a little injured, but very much alive. In the end, Obi-Wan approached him. "You have done well, my apprentice. Together, this war can be ended swiftly, and we can bring peace. No more waiting on a corrupted Senate. If we kill Dooku, we can convince the remaining Jedi and clones to stand down. Padme can take control of the Senate, and we will maintain peace," Obi-Wan told Anakin. Anakin responded finally, "We will kill Dooku, my master, and any Jedi who dares to stand in our way, and we will lead with Padme as the new leader of the Senate." The end. That's part 1. Maybe I'll do a part 2. You let me know if you've even gotten to this point. I had fun with this. I thought it was fun. First time doing it. So, yeah. Let me know. Let me know what you thought. Alright. Leave a like. That would be much appreciated. See you later.